All right. So the topic I'm going to read from page 183 today for humanization. But before I jump in, I've been doing my own practice this morning, so I'm kind of, I don't know. Let's see how I'm feeling for this. We'll see how this goes. But I'm just waiting for this to kind of land. There was something right when I was logging in that I was thinking about, because we're kind of at the last like 2 pages. There's a chance that I could finish this today. It's interesting too, because as this is like my practice right now, it's like I'm seeing the fifth hub starting to arise naturally anyway. But as far as humanization goes, the thing I wanted to talk about, I'm gonna see if this like sort of comes up as a way to talk like sort of naturally. Um, Move this down just a little bit. I don't know if this placement for the camera is the right one. Let me see. Okay, bear with me for a minute, if you will. Yeah, it's not really arising. I think that like ultimately the notion is that no, it's actually just not coming up the right way, so I'm not going to talk about it. Okay, so I'm going to read through this. We'll see what arises. Humanization as part of the fourth hub. And maybe it'll come through in this way. The thing about the fourth hub is that I guess in a way, the fourth hub is really about what it means to be a human being. And, how we relate to the world, how we connect and belong and relate to the world, how we connect and belong and relate to ourselves, how we connect and belong to other living beings and the planet. And in many ways, when you're thinking, thinking about like the fifth, sixth, and seventh hub that will be kind of ascending into, is that a lot of those are really about, in to a certain extent, really about like sort of like processing and understanding this nature. That just occurred to me. That it's learning how to communicate and create so that we can like connect and express who we are and be seen and responded to, and then also to be able to like understand and I don't know, we'll get into it. But it's interesting because the humanization part of this is that it's anything that's separating us from like I think one of the things is like there's a lot of, it's really, I guess the easier place to look is the connection with other people. But here with Parinama, we're looking at the source of the connection with ourselves is being fractured. And one example of that would be like, say, you feel low energy. Okay. Say that you want to like rest a lot, you want to watch a lot of TV, you want to like be in the like a screen time or whatever. I'm going to use like, and the thing is that if we're the fractured version of ourselves, there's going to be sort of a passenger in there with this opinion of that, of that being something that is like lazy or should be something that it isn't. I saw a video, I think it was yesterday, where someone was talking about being like a main character in your life, and they said, well, would a main character sit and like watch TV? And I'm like, yeah. Yeah. the main character does whatever they're doing in a way that is like fully embodied accepting and experiencing of it. Like you can even watch a ton of TV and TikToks and lie around and be in a state of consciousness. Like the issue is that you like dip, or not the issue, but like, I mean, part of like one of the things is like that it can, like all of these things can also be used to go into oblivion, which is also fine. But the thing is like with our humanizing of ourselves is to, instead of like the like thinking that this kind of passenger, because it's an external, it's like an internalized external notion that it's like if you're lying around you should be like ashamed of that, like that's something you should hide, that's something you should be warring against, like you should be fighting to get up, versus actually paying attention to whether it feels good. So noticing it's like, okay, like once all that kind of shame and judgment and I shouldn't be doing this is gone, like tuning into the body and being like, does this feel good in my body? Like, does my body like this? And if the answer is yes, it's like, that's good enough. That's good enough. And if the body doesn't like it, if your felt sense is like, I don't really like this, watch how naturally there really is something, if there's a direct connection with that, that will, maybe it's not immediate, but that there's like a much more like innate organic kind of movement that occurs from that. That the shaming is actually like, actually like reinforces and strengthens the behavior that we're trying to like overcome. So it's like when we have this more natural relationship with ourselves, it's like, okay, I mean, if it's like, okay, I'm going to spend, like a month laying in bed. I mean, sometimes people will be like, I'm going to give myself a day to lay in bed. I'm like, yeah, that already is kind of like, like this gift of this terrible thing I'm not supposed to be doing. And the thing is the only thing that like to humanize yourself is to just like, and not even make a story about it. Like you can, if it helps or whatever, but or you can do whatever you want. But, like this is about reconnecting with ourselves and paying attention to like reunifying. It's a reunification, is to do something that has all these layers of like, I should actually be productive. I should be doing something else. I should be. And just to tune in, and this thing that's like, if you let go of that parental, that kind of notion of authority telling you, everything will fall apart. This idea that everything will fall apart if this guilting, shaming, forceful, fearful voice is not adhered to, because it'll, if that's the thing that's keeping you from starving, that's the thing that's keeping you safe. I'm just inviting even an exploration of this where, experiment with it in small bits of just being able to say to yourself, this feels really good. Like, let the satisfaction be achieved. Let the satisfaction of the experience be achieved. And then watch. This is like about trusting ourselves. This is about very fundamental to this, is that it's like all of these things like shame and guilt and fear, especially those, as externalized kind of chronic notions, like the belief that those are the things that are it's like, if I let these things go, I will become a complete piece of shit, you know? Um, like, those aren't you. Those are adaptations, like, chronically, organically arising as they're responsive to situations is absolutely, like, that is a natural phenomenon. The long-term feeling of anxiety or the long-term feeling of being, down and depressed, like, these are things where it's like yeah. These are the thing is this is adaptive, like, this is adaptive, and I mean adaptation in terms of, like, adaptations that have, like, long outlived their usefulness and now have, in the parinama tangle, have a reflex that is associated with the belief, and this belief, like, is, validating the existence of that reflex and creating some kind of narrative around it that forms our reality, and so, yeah, so for rehumanizing ourselves, I think one of the things is to like everything here is about really being suspicious of any narrative where you are just kind of a piece of shit. Like where it's like your natural, like that your nature is lazy or gluttonous or just all the like your nature that you're trying to save yourself actively, like that there's this battle inside of yourself, they're trying to save yourself from being like sinful, you know that, and a lot of this is like that it's like these things uphold energetically unfavorable dynamics. They're unfavorable for you. They tend to be favorable for other people, by the way. But the thing is like a lot of these like adaptations are upholding conditions that wind up really benefiting other people at a tremendous cost to you. So let's talk about humanization rather. And the three segments that are in the book, and this is are giving and altruism, activism, nature and forest bathing. And I don't know, as I'm reading it, it might make sense how they wound up here, because as you may or may not remember, is in the first hub, grounding as it relates to like connecting with nature is part of the techniques and exercises there. But so something I want to just re-emphasize is that what we're looking at here is it's like a dynamic and active framework, and that for what the notion of like humanization is also personal. So finding in yourself like the resonance in the world with what that would mean for you. And I will say, like, I don't know if it's in here, 'cause there's stuff that I didn't put in here. I will say that I very intentionally did not there was a lot in my own process that had to do with racism in America, and I intentionally, I don't know whether this is right or wrong, but I intentionally did not position myself as an educator about racism, um, even though it was a big part of my own process and it was excruciatingly painful. It was, in one of the areas of my process when I was writing the book and going through my own initial process, I'm going through another one now, another cycle with this, is just how extraordinarily painful it is, in terms of, like, the notion of decentering, to see myself not as, like, sort of the Cinderella, to see myself as, like, the stepsister, to see my role in in a system of oppression as a benefactor of it, and, and all the implications, like, that's, like, kind of a rabbit hole, which is, like, take as much as you can, um, you know, take as much as you can, but it is, I mean, as far as a process in the 4th hub, it's just like, it can't be ignored. The humanity and the denial of the humanity of other human beings is, if we're harboring that for others, it means that we're harboring it for ourselves, and I realize this is also some sort of a notion that people don't love, which is that these things are part of our own self-actualization, but they are. They are. I mean, it's like, the idea that it's an abstract concept that other human beings suffer. It's like, no, that this is something we harbor within ourselves. And so the going through the pain of it, of the reconciliation, of the, um, it's like the wokeness of it, like awakening. I mean, like, how on earth did being woke become, like that become a slander? Because it's like, what's the like opposing is like asleep. And it's like, wow. But yeah, so I think it's really important, especially in matters of like education for populations, like oppressed populations and populations who've been subjected to war and violence, that you're not listening, that we do not listen to our voices talking about it and processing it, that there's is work in that way, but that in terms of, where is it? I don't have it right here. Um, mm, I mean, that it really, that we there's so much work that has been done by people who have the direct experience, and it's very hard to look at, and I can understand why people wanna hear it through the buffer of a lens of someone who doesn't have the direct experience. It's like the white woman who wrote White Fragility, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, how is this white woman making money off of racism education unapologetically?" Um, like, that's just a whole thing. Like, it's like, look to Black voices. And, even, for me, even watching my own process, like, of reading really enraged, angry, direct, fully frontal perspectives, like, in a voice that wasn't trying to diminish itself, it wasn't trying to make itself more polite, how I was like, "Well, you can't I could feel, like, my own reflexes arising, like, "You can get more flies with honey than vinegar." Like, it's just all of that stuff arising, and watching that in my own process, just, like, processing that on my own and with other white people. It's a tough one where it's like, it's not people's work to help us fucking process this stuff. It's our own trauma. And this goes back to the thing where it's like for for white folks to, kind of go, "Oh, it's so gross to think this is part of your own actualization." It's like, it is. It is, you know? And the reason I'll say, from, coming from where like, from my perspective, is it is because it's inside of us. And one of the things is, like, I'm not racist is like this thing where it's like, as long as we have this, like, that person's racist, I'm not racist. It's like the acknowledgement that I harbor inside of me values and reflexes and responses that are absolutely racist, and that is part of the self-actualization work of this, is actually, like, really, like, bringing conscious reclamation and evaluation to this. And I'll tell you, it's revolting. It's revolting because for me, one of the things that was just so distorting was to see myself as the bad guy in the story. It was very hard for me. like to actually see that it's just, I mean, if we don't realize like fully consciously, and I'm speaking in the we on this, and I'm just saying that how much it, like, we're the protagonist, we're the hero in our story, and realizing there's stories where we're the bad guy, whether it's related. I mean, this even is like just in interpersonal relationships. Why do I have this cough? All right, finishing up my latte. Okay, so humanization, giving and altruism is part one of this. So the impulse to give is part of human nature and human dignity. Altruism is giving without the expectation of reciprocity. Like an inhale or exhale, giving naturally provokes a reciprocal response. Say hello to someone, and most of the time, you're likely to get a hello back. But it's hard to give when we're in physical or emotional pain. And when we feel that we don't even have enough for ourselves, pain can make us, air quotes, selfish. It's a demand for attention, and it won't go away until it is comforted, discharged, or it passes on its own schedule. So it's if we don't feel like we have enough, we need to attend to that. So noticing and effectively supporting another person requires your own pain to be cared for and managed. That's it. When our pain and neediness requires support, seeing pain and neediness in others may provoke feelings of disgust coming from the hidden self, especially when we deeply crave mercy and kindness that we don't believe we'll receive. So statements like they need to pull themselves up or need to pull themselves together, or a cavalier, that's life, so toughen up, are protections and reflections of hurt over unmet needs. Give yourself a break for having your own needs. I don't know about that. I don't know. That feels like I don't really get that. It feels sort of like, I don't know. It's interesting because it feels like the point this is making is like the idea, of like giving without the expectation of reciprocity. It's like it's just sort of like giving as it's like naturally arising. But how hard it is to give. Okay, so it's like the difficulty of giving when we do not feel like we have enough. Like if we're in pain, to be able to attend to someone else before we feel like we're actually like stabilized enough. I guess it's kind of probably like that oxygen mask thing analogy in the plane. Yeah, okay. That's a thought. I mean, it doesn't feel like the strongest part of the book. Honestly. Like, I don't know. So let's see if the last little paragraph will, you know, vindicate this or whatever. So when there's a social hierarchy in giving, some folks can be deprived of their sense of contribution. Oh yeah. I guess this is a repeat. Maybe I talked about this and didn't write about it. So when I was interviewing unhoused folks, I experienced firsthand how declining their offers of food and kindness interfered with the dignity of our connection. Human dignity involves contribution and reciprocity. Yeah, I feel like honestly, I don't even know that first part. Like I'm kind of having a hard time like making coherent sense of it. Maybe that's me, just whatever mood I'm in. Um Yeah, it doesn't really, I don't know, it's not really great. It's not great. Yeah, it needs an edit, or it needs a rewrite. Yeah, I mean, I really feel like the only point in there that is about giving is the fact that it's like it's really, like, part of human dignity, and even, like, the fact that charitable organizations, um, I guess is probably kind of nuanced, which is, like, a lot of charitable organizations, there's a lot of this thing where it's like, "Let me give you this thing," um, and that puts me in the position of, like, I get to be the good guy, and you get to be kind of like the not the bad guy, but it's just sort of like the less dignified person. Like, it's like I'm the person with the dignity, and you're the person who's like, sort of desperate enough that you have to take, um, you know, so I'm just bringing that into question that, for yeah, and then I guess kind of like so there that is like the first layer, and then the second being like, to be able to lovingly support somebody until they are in the position where they can feel like they can give a little bit. I feel like like giving people an opportunity to give even just a little bit, even if that's part of the altruism and that's part of the giving, is that it's like giving a little bit so that somebody can, I mean, I don't know. This is like not really that great. I don't know, there's something it's like I read something yesterday that said you have to smile at the mirror before it smiles back. So it's hard. I guess one of the things I have a hard time with this is that it's like this balance between knowing that it's like it really is an aspect of human dignity to be able to contribute. Like it's an important part. It's, like inferiority versus, industry versus inferiority. It's like part of like what makes us feel like a like it's third hub, like our power to be able to feel that and to feel totally disempowered and then be expected to be able to like really step up and like like pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of thing. It's an interesting dynamic because it's kind of like to infantilize somebody and then, almost and then not understand that, especially like for an adult receiving. And yeah. It's yeah, there's that. This discussion worthy. Starts a discussion at the very least, like as in, huh? Okay, so the next section is activism. So it's impossible to reach the full potential in our personal connections when we deny another person's humanity or lived experience. In Team Human, media theorist and professor Douglas Rushkoff writes about recalibrating our humanity by looking into the eyes of another human being. Be mindful of invasive eye contact, which can interfere with the psychic boundaries of the sixth hub, but notice if you can sense the shared presence in the eyes of all other human beings. Yeah, be ready for that one. I mean, honestly, here, actually, I'll step in just for a note here is that just taking a moment, if you're at a cash register, if you do a transaction with somebody, to literally just take a beat and, like, look at into their eyes. Just there's like, I'm gonna leave that. It's something it's interesting, that how much, like, scanning we do in terms of, even when we're talking with somebody that it's kinda like we're not fully, like, we're sort of looking in their general direction, but to actually just check in with somebody briefly, just to clock, you're looking right, like, "I see you," and then you kinda go on with your thing. It's not invasive, it's just a check-in where it's something you go, boom, and move on. You're like literally just connecting. Like, I see you as a human being. Move on. And I won't even talk about like how much that changes the way people react to you. I'm just gonna leave that there. So, evaluating your beliefs, speaking up, and making donations are vital to working in this hub. Fourth hub activism involves action, standing up and fighting for humanization and the conservation of the natural world. We're fighting for ourselves. Fourth hub interruption to connection causes inner harm that allows us to detach and not feel when other people and the environment are being degraded and in pain. But we can act at any moment, and a single action on behalf of another can shift a lifetime of inaction as we build momentum and feel connection to each other. The shared network of humanity is interconnected, and denial of this connection requires physical constriction and rigidity. I'm going to put like a pin on it because I'm coming back to that. This work also involves hearing lived experiences of others in their own words and accepting them without the requirement of understanding them. All that's needed is tolerance and acceptance. Psychotherapist and trauma specialist Resma Manikam's My Grandmother's Hands, Racialized Trauma, and the Pathway to Mending Our Hearts and Bodies is essential reading for this fourth hub work. Someone else's lived experience doesn't need to make sense for you for it to be true. And the same goes for you when it comes to feeling the need to explain yourself. You shouldn't have to. Your life is not validated because it makes sense to other people. Indigenous Australian artist and Muri activist Lila Watson says, if you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. If you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. So if you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. Yeah. So the part that I pinned here is the shared network of humanity is interconnected, and denial of the connection requires physical constriction and rigidity. This is once again why we're working the hubs in a sequential manner, where it's like first, second, third, fourth, because the second hub, the capacity to feel and building and growing that and understanding what it's composed of and being able to reach into the tools for it, the ability, like that is a prerequisite for the intensity of the feeling that arises in the fourth hub. Because this is really hard. There are things that we have to see about ourselves and in all areas about ourselves and our relationship with ourselves, our relationships with our family, and our relationship with society and our relationship like culturally. They're very painful things to see. And so to be able to have the feelings, because the feelings and the blocking the access to it is creating the rigidity, which once it's painful to feel, but once it's broken through and once it's in like and what it calcified over is enlivened, like this is where what we're trying to access, which is the feeling of being alive, of loving more deeply, of creating more, of like feeling in our integrity, where we start to access this stuff. But it is painful. It is painful because it's like the way through is feeling things that, you know, we've really actively protected ourselves against for good reason. Okay. The thing is I like, it's just, look, we protect ourselves because it's really hard, and we're, you know, if we don't have the right tools to do it, it like, yeah, it really, I mean, it's really understandable. I mean, it's really understandable why you could read this and still be like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I get it. Yeah, the price is high, though. I mean, the price is really high. So, yeah. Yeah, it's a decision. So, last but not least here, nature and forest bathing. So, scientific studies have measured and demonstrated the effect of spending time around trees, forest bathing, on mental health, healing, immune function, creativity, and general well-being. See chapter 4. Trees make us feel more connected and boost our mood. But despite the scientific literature supporting the positive effect of time spent outside, many of us find it hard to do. Sometimes, when we're tired or stressed, the relative calm of nature feels out of sync with the speed of our thoughts and the tension in our bodies. When we're out of sync, the frustration of this dissonance can initially feel aggravating for the first 5 to 10 minutes. That initial tension is at the center of much anxiety, but the payoff is worth it. One study uncovered that people were more helpful and caring after watching nature videos or looking at pictures of trees. If you can't get excited about going outside, there are other options. So, having plants in your home, and natural materials for both furniture and decoration have also been shown to be supportive. Simply adding photographs of trees to your home can also support happiness. Keep in mind that until we synchronize with the pace, watching nature programs can have that itchy, out of sync, too slow feeling, like initially being out in nature. So try to approach watching them with the same awareness of attempting to sync up. So, several studies cited in forest medicine experts Qing Li's book, Forest Bathing: How Trees Can Help You Find Health and Happiness, track the increase in altruism, spontaneous gratitude, and connection that occurs when we spend time in nature. It's hard to feel alone when you're surrounded by earth, sky, sun, plants, water, and animals. If you work from home, try looking out the window before you begin your morning meetings, stepping outside to get some air, or going for a walk at lunch. Notice the sights and sounds of the world that surrounds you. So, yeah. So one thing when I was writing this book, and I was not someone who was a, like forest bather before this. Like this stuff had actually not really been in my, it was actually something like the grounding and connection with nature as an actual practice, not just something where it's like sort of like, hey, I went outside and I feel better and I'm not really making too big of a connection there. It actually is born out of necessity. I don't know if I think for some folks, actually most folks can really relate to the intensity of this book. It's intense. And so imagine being in it and like producing it and writing it. It was like there were times where it's just like absolutely like so overstimulating that it just drove me to find the practices that could help me regulate in ways that weren't cognitive, because the cognitiveness of the work that I was doing in here was so intense that it was like cognitive tools were sort of like throwing like pebbles at a tank kind of thing. So one of the things that I used to do is like in my front garden is I would go out and I would just barefoot stand and I'd do a first hub practice with like, kind of plugging in, keeping the knees slightly bent, loosening my bum, and just standing and letting myself like sort of absorb and synchronize with like my feet in contact with nature, and also just being surrounded by nature. And it's like the reason I wrote about this is like in accounts that I read, there are people and I guess also talking with people, but um like when I was researching this, like one of the things they were talking about with like city people was that they got really aggravated. And like that's part of the thing is like synchronizing into this. There's a number of really fantastic books. So Shinrin Yoku, this book's really delightful. And one of the things I want to point out about this is that it's a really lovely book. How it's laid out is just gorgeously all like it's just it's really, like, slow, succinct, lots of pictures, so the experience of even reading it is very Shinrin-yoku, and, I think one of the things that's, really nice about so this book was, Yoshifumi Miyazaki is, this is a different person than the book that's in here. Um, there's a few books. They're in the bibliography, but if here, I'll just speak to these here. Is that so Yoshifumi, Miyazaki is the deputy director of Chiba University Center of Environment, Health, and Field Sciences, and he received multiple awards for his work. It's interesting that in Japan, they actually, I might have already talked about this, is that they like scientifically studied with like saliva markers and, like evidence-based methodologies, the impact of time in nature. It's really beautiful. I really recommend this book. It's really gorgeous. There's a lot of exercises in it. Really fantastic. Yeah, just open it and take a peek. But anyway, I think that's it for now. I think we did a good job. Congratulations, we made it. Thank you for coming along. And yeah, I really appreciate you being here. And I really appreciate, I've been thinking a lot lately about kind of like what feels right for me with this and that. I won't go into I'm not going to elaborate on that right now. But thinking about like what I want out of this, like what is like my intention and my intent, and and the thing that's just coming more and more into focus is how much, like how deeply I want this for other people. The more I get into this practice, and this is at like, like directly as I'm starting to experience like increasing liberation in this, increasing understanding, increasing just yeah, like kind of expansion and vitality and aliveness and um yeah, it's like how much I want this for other people. And in a way, there's like in centering myself in that, it's just that it's like I really love the idea of a world where there's just like where people are more free. Yeah. But, just yeah, I can really feel that. Okay, so that's it for now. Oh my gosh. I'll see you next time, and again, thank you. Bye.